To give you some background information of what's going on. Um, this Monday we went down to Columbus, Ohio, to the Rosedale International Center. That is basically a center where they have long-term and short-term missionaries, and it's in this community called Shepherd's Community in downtown Columbus. It's a pretty dark area. It's low income housing. There's a lot of different uh, ethnic minorities, a lot of different people groups, and then in the middle of all that, you have this really nice building that we were staying at. And so part of our challenge this week was to go out into these different groups and interact with these people. To give you kind of an idea of at the Dollar General down the street, there was like some kind of serious crime that went on. There was a whole scene and everything. I'm telling you all this now after I bring your kid back and not before when I take them. But it was really cool just to for the group to be able to interact with these different kinds of people and do our best to show them the love of Christ and sort of get out of our bubble in Holmes County to be able to go and do this type of thing. And one of the main uh, emphasis on the week is that not everybody in this group is most likely going to be a missionary or going to be sent out long term overseas or do anything like that. But we all have a calling to be missional, and we all have a calling to witness to those around us. And so, what this trip kind of teaches us is how to go out and interact with people that are around us, how to talk to strangers, how to walk up to somebody and go ask them if they know Jesus or if they need prayer for anything, if they already are a Christian, and to ask them some random and silly questions, some prompts that we were giving, but they'll get into that a little more. And so just kind of get us out of our comfort zone and learn how to witness to different people around us. Everybody on this stage did an amazing job. I am super proud of the way that they did step out of their comfort zone and the way that they would approach strangers and the way that they took on the city, even though it's not our normal context. And there was a real willingness to witness, to be a missionary where we're called, and so yeah, I'll let them get into exactly what that looked like. But parents, thank you for letting your kids come on this trip. Not all of them are up here, but thank you for letting them come on this trip. And they did an amazing job. And I know as leaders, we were super proud of them for all the different ways that they witnessed, all the different ways that they interacted with strangers, and the way that they grew together and the way that they were vulnerable with one another. Uh, your child grew this week, and we're hoping to be able to take that home and apply it to our daily lives within the youth group, within the church, and also within the community. So I'll let them talk a little bit about what they did. We are split up in our pods, so my pod can stand up. This is the group of people that we spent the week with doing our different activities and outreaches. And if we didn't start off the week close, we ended it close by choice or by coercion. I'm not sure, but either way, we ended up close. And we had a lot of fun together. And so we're going to break down the weeks by day and give you some insight into what kind of activities we did. So,
All right. So I'm gonna kind of talk about when we first got there. There was another youth group there, and it was First Mennonite from Indiana. And we went there and we played some like get to know games, and we played. It's called SWAT. It's kind of hard to describe, but you stand in like a circle, and then there's someone in the middle, and the person in the circle has to say a name before you get swatted. And then we played the blanket game where there's someone behind a curtain and you don't know who it is. So it's the first person who says the other person's name goes to the other side. And then those are pretty much the games that we played to get to know the people. And it's a lot of fun. So I enjoyed it. And my favorite part was probably the ministry talk. So,
Okay, I'm going to be talking about something that we did on the first day. We went on a prayer walk around the neighborhood and just prayed for a bunch of people and like the streets and the buildings. Before that, we all went into our pods and prayed for like a color or a word that we could look for and pray when we go out there. And for me, I heard the word guidance. Yeah. So I prayed for guidance for all the people. And my favorite part of the week was the prayer challenge, and someone will talk more about what that was. But we just had a good time and bonded with our pod, and hopefully we impacted a lot of people. I know it impacted my life.
So I'm also going to be talking about more that happened during prayer walk. So we split into pods before, and we pretty much just prayed over asking God what to do or where to go. And I was asking him to just guide us to where he wants us to pray. And I got the image of a bee, and it felt like something flicked me in the back of my head. And we were walking down the neighborhood, and I was looking for a bee. I couldn't find one. And then all of a sudden, one flies over and hits Matt right in the head. And we stopped and prayed. And when we were praying, it felt like something was crawling on my leg. I don't know if it was the bee or what it was, but when we were done praying, it was gone. And then we also prayed for another couple on a porch. They had a dog, and our intern was trying to feed it goldfish. I don't know why. And we prayed for them. And when we were done praying, I look over to my left, and I see a bee go and fly onto the railing of the porch. So I just thought that was pretty cool. And my favorite part of the week was probably ministry night, which was all us guys would go and pray for each other in a room. And to me, that was just really special.
So on the first night, we went brown bagging, which is basically when we filled a bunch of brown bags filled with different foods. And we filled one for ourselves and then several more for any homeless person that we would see on our walk. We walked for a while and then we ate our dinners while watching some old ladies play tennis. And then we walked back and we heard a homeless guy singing, I think it was Gangnam Style, from across the street. So we crossed the street and then Matt and Luke went over to him and gave him a brown bag. And we were actually just in time because a bus like pulled up seconds after we gave him his meal. So then he went on the bus. And then my highlight was going to summer camp and helping out with a bunch of kids. We did a skit and we played games and listened to JoJo Siwa upon request. And I also accidentally kicked a basketball directly in a kid's face at full speed. But everything other than that went smoothly.
So on Tuesday, which my pod's going to talk about Tuesday, our big event that we did on Tuesday was the prayer challenge. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically just a giant scavenger hunt all over the city of Columbus. So each pod went out separately. We were all given a very small paper map that was probably smaller than my phone. And it had different locations that we were supposed to find on it. And so if we didn't know how to read a map, we had to ask strangers where we were going. We had to find like more detailed maps that were posted around the city. So there were 7 different RI staff interns that were stationed all over the city. And our goal was to find them. And so, for example, one was in a library, one was at the Columbus Commons. And so, yeah, they were spread out all over the city. And our goal was to use our little map to locate each one of them. And so once we did, they would talk to us about a specific issue or problem that was prevalent in Columbus. So, for example, they talked about sex trafficking. They talked about homelessness. So those were a few examples. And then once they talked to us, then we had to complete a challenge. And that was kind of different per station. At one station, we all got to sing a worship song together. That was really fun. At another one, we prayed for people. We got to pray together. So that was really cool. And each intern that we found, we got a certain amount of points. And so we had a lot of incentive to hurry because we only had 4 hours, around 4 hours to complete or to find all the interns. And so we had to really hurry. And for everyone that we got a certain amount of points. And along with our map, we also received a list of questions that we could ask random people, which I think Rachel's going to talk more about that. But I will say that it was a little bit scary for some of us, I think, and it felt a little awkward because some of the questions were really personal. And so we weren't sure how people would respond to some of them. But the people that we did talk to, most of them were very open and very willing to talk to us. For lunch, we were only given about, I think it was $1.50 per person. So we had to, each pod had to get really creative and figure out how they were going to get enough food to fill everybody. So our pod, we found a pizza place and we went inside and there were 6 of us, so we had about $9 and we got 8 cheesy breadsticks. And we split them between the 6 of us. And we were very hungry and they were very good. And I would say the prayer challenge was definitely the highlight of my week. I think that we had such a fun time getting pushed out of our comfort zone and talking to strangers. And we got lost a few times and that was kind of fun to figure out where we were going. It also rained for part of the day for a few hours. And so we got completely soaked and it was cold and we could have complained a lot and had bad attitudes about it. But my pod had such good attitudes and I was so encouraged because they were very optimistic and it just turned into such a fun experience for us. And we were also able to track how many steps we took throughout the 4 hours using somebody's Apple Watch. And so when we got back, we saw that we had walked approximately, I think it was 18,000 steps in about 4 hours. And so we were definitely very tired and very sore when we got back. But more than that, we were really, I think, excited and really fulfilled about what we had been able to accomplish. I think it's really cool to step out of our comfort zones and talk to strangers and just do scary things that we wouldn't normally do. And so I think because of that, it was just a really cool experience for all of us.
Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit more about the specific questions that we had to ask people. We had 2 questions for icebreakers that were simple and fun, like tell me a joke or let me tell you a joke, which can be hard to think of a joke on the spot. But a specific question we asked a lady, she was like walking up the street and we're like, hey, we have a question for you. Can we speak with you? And she was like, you don't want to talk to me. I used to be like a prostitute. And we were like, oh, okay. And so we like kept chasing her down the street and we're like, oh no, that doesn't matter. Like we still would like to talk to you. Like we're doing this city challenge thing and I explained it and she just kept on walking. Like we were just chasing her in the rain and we finally get to a crosswalk and she's like, well, I guess you can pray for me. And then the crosswalk changed and she like kept running away. And so we all decided that we were still going to pray for her. And we actually got to buy her a bus ticket because she like had a walker and she was a little bit older. And so we were able to buy her a bus ticket and like just pray for her as she was leaving. But it was super interesting because the first thing she led with was like probably something that she was most ashamed of. And I think as like people in general, that you don't lead with your like worst part about you. You normally start with like, this is my best quality. And so that was interesting to hear from her. And then another question we asked was a man, he was a security guard in the library. And we asked him what's like the most difficult thing for you? And he said that like people call him names and are constantly like giving him a hard time for like trying to enforce the rules and like that's difficult in his life. But he was so happy and optimistic and was like, it's okay though. Like it's just a part of life. It's a part of my job. And like, I don't think too much of it. And so we got to pray for him and he was super grateful. And then we asked a lady a question, what's the best advice that you can give us as young people? And she had said, don't be afraid to try new things. She did not like want to get into office work or start an office job. And then she had actually started working at the Nationwide building, and she said she's been there for 40 years and has been able to support a family off of that job. And yeah, basically it prompted us to try new things. But yeah, I think with all the questions we asked people, it was just very clear that there's things that people have going on. And this has been a theme throughout the week. Like here at VBS, people are saying there's like a lot of behind the scenes work that was hard, and you're never gonna know like that part of somebody's life unless you go up and ask them. And so it was super encouraging for us to maybe be more bold in our own community to like take time to ask somebody how they're doing, or like what's actually going on in their life instead of just like, passing greetings. And so that was really cool. It was really cold, really rainy. Our team actually ended up winning the prayer challenge, which made it all worth it. But yeah, we met a lot of interesting people, and also just like we didn't have our phones, and so it was spent a lot of time of just like observing other people in the streets and getting to like really see the city was a lot of fun, and then we had a great group to do it with. So yeah.
I'm going to be talking about one of the people that we met from one of the challenges that one of the interns gave us. His name was Rod, and he was originally from India, and he moved out here when he was about 24, 25-ish. And his story is kind of interesting because he moved to North Dakota from India, and then ended up in California, and at one point was going to New York to do a job for restaurant. He was going to manage a restaurant and had a layover in Columbus. And he stayed there, like kind of hung around and like kind of fell in love with the city, but moved on to New York and took care of the business. And a few years later, he moved him and all his family to Ohio and to Columbus and started his own restaurant. And it was kind of funny because we were talking to him, and at first he wasn't too sure about it, and he was kind of like didn't want to talk much. And we asked him, we were like, what was your favorite like meal that you like make here? And he was like, well, he likes all his food and everything that he makes. And he wasn't too sure about us just talking to him. And then we kind of introduced ourselves and kind of told him that we were like on a missions trip and with City Challenge. And he started to like open up. And at one point he was telling about his family and how his one kid's going to Ohio State and his other kids are getting married. And it's just interesting because he like wasn't sure about us and just ended up showing us pictures of his daughter's wedding and like all the nights out that he had. And we just like got to know this person that like we just met. So it was just something that like, it was nice to see that somebody was so willing to open up and to share with us, even though like at first he was really shy about it. And I think my favorite or highlight of the week would have been that day. It was a lot of fun. We had a lot of great times and good memories and met a lot of good people. So yeah.
So I'm going to talk about somebody else that we met while we were doing the prayer challenge. So we were in the library, and it was like our last stop, and we had met an intern there, and we were all just like really tired, and we were ready to go back to the van. But we had met with our intern, and then we had a few more questions to ask. So me and Sadie ran around the library trying to ask people questions, and the other girls went to a small little cafe that was in the library, and they had bought a muffin because they had given us money to spend on so we could like share it with someone. So they had bought a muffin at a little cafe, and we all got back together after we were done asking our questions. And then Rachel was like, oh, who wants to give out this muffin to like a random person? And I was like, oh, I'll do it. So I took the muffin, and I went over to like the corner of the library, and there was this like group of homeless people, and it was kind of hard because I like had to choose like which one like should I pick. So I walked over to like this guy that was sitting with two other guys, and I asked him how his day was going, and he was like, "Oh, it's going pretty good." And I was like, "Okay, well, I'd like to bless you with this muffin." And um, he was like so happy, and he almost got tears in his eyes about this muffin that I was giving him. And I asked him what his name was, and I don't really know. Everything else he said was in English, but his name was definitely not. It started with an R. But I gave him the muffin, and then I asked him if we could pray for him, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." Like, he would love prayer. So then I called the rest of the group over, and we prayed for him, and he was just really happy and like really just exclaimed with joy that he could have this small muffin. And that just taught me that I need to be more like grateful for the little things I have in life, just like he was for like the muffin that we gave him. So yeah. And then my highlight of the trip was probably all like the funny memories that we made, and one being Sadie. While we were cleaning one day, she had to clean like the top of a bunk, and she got up there, and then she's like, "Chloe, I can't get down." So with the help of me and Amber, kind of, we helped Sadie get down because she was kind of scared. But yeah, we made a lot of memories, and it was really fun.
So I'm also going to be talking a little bit about the prayer challenge, and then I'm going to be talking about one of our outreaches that we did on Thursday. So as the rest of my pod kind of explained, we were walking around the city, and we had this tiny little map with X's on it. So we planned out a route, and we were like, this is the smartest way to get all the interns, and we were like so pumped. We were like, we're winning this. Ain't no way we're losing. And so we start. And in like the first 10 minutes, we find an intern, and it was going really well, and it was just so much fun. I think we found 3 more, and then we get to like the 4th one or something, and we cannot find this intern. Like, we are walking around, which building was it? The Statesman building. We walked around it like 5 times. We were like, she should be here, and she just wasn't. Like, we were so lost. And then we actually walked past that intern and found another one. And then we had to come back. But we finally figured out where we were going. And so then our last stop was the library. And so the library and where we parked was so far away. So we were at the library, and they said start heading back by 3:30ish. We got to the library at 3:30. And we were like running around the library, found the intern, talking to people, and then we realized we have that long walk back. The walk back should have taken, how long was it? Like 30, 40 minutes. I think we got back in 25-ish minutes. We were like running, and I had sandals on, and my feet had blisters on the bottom at the end. It was not fun, but that was kind of my experience. We made it fun. It was okay. And so then on Thursday, my group, well, this is my highlight. I have 2 different highlights, but on my highlight on Thursday was whenever we went to our outreach, we went to the West Side Free Store Ministries. It was in the bottom of a church, and we got split up. Me and Rachel were in the kitchen, and the rest were sorting clothes and putting them on hangers. And so me and Rachel walked into the kitchen, and so what the ministries kind of does is it provides 1 hot meal, and then they have so many items that they can get from the free store, depending on how big their family is. So me and Rachel were tasked with peeling potatoes, but we walk in the kitchen, and it was not what we expected at all. It was kind of dirty. It was not where you would expect somewhere to be serving to be. All the implements had rust on them, like they were dull, the knives were dull, but we got tasked with peeling potatoes. And the potato peelers had rust on them. They were just not very great at all. And it just kind of put in perspective of how kind of like this place is serving, even though they don't have the best place to do it. Because I feel sometimes we can be like, oh, I don't have the best things to serve. I don't have a great place to do it. And just realizing that this place just took whatever they had and used it to serve others was really cool. But then we spent probably an hour, hour and a half peeling potatoes, and then we go to chop them up, and most of them were rotten inside. So all that work kind of went down the drain. We used what we could, but it was just kind of like the cook, the main cook there, her name was Miss Teresa. She was still so positive. She was dancing around, hitting the gritty, doing everything. But she was getting questions asked left and right, and it was just kind of cool to see how she stayed calm under the stress. Like she was used to it, and like I was stressed out for her. But she was super positive, and then the people started coming in for their free meal. So how it works is they line up outside and then they give them a ticket, and then that ticket has a number on it. So they call out number 1, and then number 1 can go in the free store while everybody else is eating. And then it kind of goes in order like that. And a lady came in and she was yelling, "Yo, some bad words, this blank blank of a person is cutting in line, like he's taking all of our spots. I want my ticket, like give me number 3. That's how I was in the line." And Miss Teresa went out and she really talked to her, and I think that really put in perspective, like she was so kind to the people that like they were homeless, but she still took the time and didn't act like she was above them at all. She was really just loving to them, and like they knew her. They were like, "Hey, Miss Teresa, your potato soup last week was so good," and it was just so cool to see that Miss Teresa could have impacted their lives like that. And yeah. And then my second highlight was when we played Apples to Apples at the RIC. So we decided that we wanted to play Apples to Apples, but we wanted to play it and you had to talk in lisps. Why we chose to do that, I don't really know. So half of us were talking in lisps, half of us were talking in Boston accents. Some people will talk about the Boston accents later, but it was just a lot of fun, and yeah, just getting to know people, and it was so much fun.
So I was the leader of this group, this pod. We're going to talk about Wednesday and what we did on Wednesday. This is my second time going to City Challenge, first time as a leader. Being a leader on a trip like this definitely has its challenges, but I definitely enjoyed it, and it brought a lot of good, and I definitely enjoyed this group. They are some quiet people, and I'm not very outgoing myself, so that made it interesting at times. But they did a really good job of getting out of their comfort zones throughout the week, for sure. A few highlights that I had would be the outreach that we did on Wednesday, which they're going to talk about. It was just with a lot of the kids in the community, and also just spending time with this group of guys. It was only 7 guys, I think, so we spent a lot of time together, and we had a lot of good laughs and a great time sharing and opening up with one another about some personal things, and that was just really awesome to be a part of. So I will let them share specifically about what we did on Wednesday.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about Wednesday morning. Every morning we had like quiet time in a session. In quiet time, you were like led through questions and passages, and you had to like answer them. And it was more personal time with God and prayer and stuff. And then you had session, which was session and worship. Worship was, well, singing songs. And session was like just basically a lesson. It was like an hour long, and Wednesdays was about navigational tools and like working your way through the Bible, and it was really great. It was all water-based. That's why it's called Anchored, as all the shirts say. And then after the session, we had our outreach overview, which is when we would learn like what we were doing for our outreach that day. And in our case, we were going to a kids camp and putting that on. So we had to learn a bunch of VBS dances, or not VBS, but they like dances. And the skit, and we practiced the dances probably 3 times before being thrown into it, and the skit once. So we had the scripts for the skit, and that went better than the dances. But half the time for the dances, we were just waving our hands in the air because when we got there, we all blanked. It was interesting. The kids loved it, but I think the parents were a little judgmental. They were all recording us. Um, and then for lunch that day, the food here was amazing. The lunch, we had sweet and sour pork over steamed rice and garlic green beans, and it was incredible. I can't even explain it. And then we went up to our outreach at the kids' camp, and like I said, the dances didn't go too great. The skit was interesting. We got to dress up, and the kids really loved it. I mean, they didn't. They interacted really well, and I think the camp as a whole went really well, which Claudia will talk about more. My highlight, I had multiple. One, we would do like, along with the other youth group, it was mainly them, but we had like spontaneous worship sessions just like around a fireplace, and it was really fun with just like a cajon and piano and guitar. And then also at the kids' camp, I met this little boy named Danny, and he was 3 years old. You couldn't understand him very well, but he was adorable. And by the end of the day, like by the end of the time we were there for a couple hours. He was like attached to me. I was holding him. Held him for probably 30 minutes to an hour straight. And when it was time for him to leave, he ran away. And then it wasn't until I told him I'd carry him over that he would like leave. And we got to meet his grandma and his brothers and stuff, and they were all super sweet as well. So those were just my highlights.
So I'm going to be talking about the camp more. So obviously we got there and we like sent a couple groups out to go knocking on doors to see if we could get any more kids to come, because when we came there was only like a family of like 5. And that they went out, and then we just picked up a couple kids off the street and they came in. I feel like the kids really enjoyed it. We did the skit and the songs, as Keely said. And my favorite thing from that was Jared just yelling at the kids to jump up and down the whole time because we forgot everything. And then we played games for like 3 hours straight with the kids. We played like soccer, dodgeball, duck, duck, goose, and it was just really fun to see the joy that the kids had on their face every time like we'd bring up a new idea, or just like getting to know them more and getting to know all the kids' names. And then my highlight was definitely the prayer challenge, prayer challenge. It was, even though it was really rainy and cold, and we did get lost a couple times, but it wasn't Carson's fault because he was the one that had the map, but it was our fault apparently. Um, that was, yeah, yikes. And then that was my favorite. And we also like that day, like Rachel said, we only had like a couple dollars for lunch. So we went into Dollar General and none of us really knew what we wanted. We were like, oh, we can have like peanut butter and jellies. And the other was like, no, I want this. And we were just kind of fighting in the Dollar General. So we ended up with graham crackers and pepperonis. And it was yikes. It was okay, I guess. And then also like the late night talks that I had with the girls in my room, we just had like a bunch of girls come over to our room all the time. That was also a highlight.
Graham crackers and pepperoni is really good. I really do recommend it. Okay, so I'm talking about what we did Wednesday night. After dinner, we went to a park and we just played games for a couple hours. We played a game called Miller Bee, which is just ultimate frisbee, ultimate football, which is like ultimate frisbee, but with a football, and then soccer, all on the same field at the same time. Just 2 teams going at it, playing all 3 games at once. It was pretty crazy. And the soccer was dangerous. Like people didn't know how to play soccer, so soccer ball came to them, they just kicked it, and a couple people got hit. It was pretty funny. So that was that. And then I had a lot of highlights, but one of them was the first night that we got there. Andre was very tired, so he went to bed early. That was not a good idea for him. So when it was actually time for bed, me and Matt, so it was me, Matt, and Andre in a room. So when me and Matt got in there, I was kind of just joking around, telling Andre to get up for breakfast. But Matt had the idea to take it one step further and actually convince him that it was breakfast time. So we got the other room in on it, and we had Jared come in the room, and Jared and Matt were brushing their teeth really loudly, getting dressed. I was convincing Andre that everybody was up and we're late to breakfast. We got to get up there. And before, Jared had set up a phone in the corner of the room to record it. And Andre noticed that, and he was like, "What's that phone doing there?" And I said, "Oh, it's the time lapse for the church. We're gonna use it like getting ready." And he was just like, "Okay." But that doesn't make any sense because he had his shirt off, so that wouldn't work. So that was, and then okay, so we were talking really loudly about what we were gonna do that day, so that he would get out of his bed. So he finally gets out of the bed, gets dressed, gets ready for the day. He's so ready to pound this day, get through it. You didn't, or you didn't? He brushed his teeth. He was all ready. So we took him out of the room. We went up to the cafeteria. All the lights were off. It was dark outside, and the clock said 10:50. So everything pointed to it not being morning, but it was so early in the morning, and he only got like 2 hours of sleep. So, because we woke him up at 11, so he was just like, and that was really funny. We made it all the way up to the cafeteria, and the lights were off and nobody was there, and he was just like, and we started dying laughing, and Carson was there too, and he was just like, he knew what happened. And call back to last year at Arizona, where we woke up Andre in the middle of the night, circling his bed and just saying, "Wake up, wake up, wake up." So we don't like to let Andre get a full night's sleep, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, they don't like to let me sleep. So here's our pod. No, we did not walk around Columbus, just us two. There's Jared was our leader. He can't make it, and Brianna was part of it too. So Thursday, our outreach was going to a Somali community. I think there was some kind of organization set up just to have kids come and like a summer camp type thing, painting and just different stuff. It ended up breaking out into a water fight, and I got a bucket, and I was the bucket boy. No one was safe. And then one of my favorite things was every missions trip, there's always some shenanigans going on. Usually some kind of catchphrase or something, always. And this year was Boston. We was always talking Boston. It was funny. And they think it's annoying, but it's funny. Yeah, it's got a ring to it. But yeah, I love them. Wouldn't trade them for the world.
So I'm also going to be talking about what we did on Thursday. So we had this like ethnic meal that we ate with our hands and bread. That was kind of a challenge sometimes, but it was still really good. We also had ministry night that night, and which is basically when both the youth groups like split up, and then we also split up between like the guys and the girls would get like different rooms, and we basically just like shared our testimonies and prayed for each other. So yeah, that was a really good night. And then my favorite part of the whole trip was the prayer challenge. Even though it rained, we had a lot of fun, and we were almost got out of time to the last intern, but we decided to run there, and yeah, it was just a lot of fun being all together and talking to people.
I forgot to mention my highlight was for these questions. Brady ran up to a guy, and one of the questions was, "What is some advice you'd give to a young person?" And Brady ran up to this guy, and I don't know if he was homeless or what his state was, but he ran up to him and he asked him, "What is some advice you'd give a homeless or not a homeless? What that too? What is some advice you'd give a young person?" And the guy looked at him and he said, "Go figure it out for yourself, kid," and sent him on his way. Yeah, no, but this was a great group to be with. I learned that leading a trip is it can be challenging, but in reality, you learn just as much from them as they might learn from you. And I can safely say that I think I can safely say that none of these people up here should be viewed as kids anymore, but as young men and young women. They really stepped up and proved themselves to be useful for the kingdom of God. And ask them questions about what they did, encourage them, ask them about how they'll apply it. Parents really engage them in this conversation, but they did a wonderful job. So you can go ahead and give them another round of applause. You guys can go down.